James Morrison, welcome to noise11.com. I mean, last time we had you in, it was with Paul Kelly, this time flying solo because you got your own show coming up at the zoo.
Absolutely. Yeah, looking forward to that. It's quite a special.
Yeah. What goes into putting a set list together when you're doing a show that is something special like that?
Well, this one particularly is quite difficult. It's the A to Z of jazz we're doing, which is like a chronological sort of walk through the history of jazz. And the A standing for Armstrong, Louis Armstrong, right at the beginning of jazz, and the Z for Zawinul, Joe Zawinul, the great funk, keyboard player, and everything in between. And it's deciding what to put in. If you're going to sort of go historically through jazz and hit the highlights, there are so many, and to get it into one show and not leave too many gaps, and also keep it so the whole thing flows, as a great sort of entertaining show is. So I'm actually in the throes of that at the moment, trying to put together the set list to sort of go, well, I suppose I've got to do, I've got to do some bebop, I've got to do some of the Latin jazz, I've got to do, when I say got to, I want to do them all, but it's more a case of what to leave out rather than what to put in. And I'm sort of going through that at the moment. I start with a list of everything I'd like to do. Then I go, okay, that's a 6-hour show. Now let's start culling.
What about every letter of the alphabet? Do you cover the Q's? Do you cover the X's?
I don't try and make it A to Z. We just sort of go from Armstrong to Zawinul. I don't try and hit the letters. That would complicate things enormously. But that's a good. I hadn't thought of that before. Maybe that's another show.
Well, maybe for ABC Kids, you might be able to do the alphabetically jazz show for them.
That could be fun.
Yeah. I've lost track of how many albums you've had. I think you're coming up to the 40th anniversary of the first album, A Night in Tunisia, in the next 12 months.
That's correct. Yes, it is the 40th anniversary. And I think I'm nearly averaging sort of one a year. I think I've got about 37 albums out, and I've got a couple in the pipeline. So it's averaging about one a year over all of those years.
Are you one of these anniversary guys? Do you go back and do the 20th anniversary or the 30th, and will you mark the 40th?
I'm generally not, but having said that, there's always some sort of anniversary thing going on, because even though I'm not, there are people who are, and they go, hey, let's do a 40th anniversary, let's do this, let's do that. So I end up doing a few anniversary gigs because other people think of it. But there's an idea. Maybe I'll make the 40th album. If I can get it out this year, I can make the 40th anniversary 40th album. That could be fun.
That'd be the way to go. There's been a couple of chart hits along the way. Let me have a look down here. Like you were actually in the top 40 when this one came out.
It is true. Yes. Yes, and that one I saw Ken not so long ago, and we were talking about that, what fun that was to do. When was it? In 90, I think we did that.
I think maybe hang on, we'll have a date on the back here, no doubt. And no, it doesn't. But the Ken you were referring to was Ken Doan, of course, and that is all his artwork.
Yeah, and we did that album two ways. It's mainly paintings of Ken's that I wrote music to accompany, the idea of the paintings. But one of them on there was the other way. I composed a song and sent it to Ken, and he did a painting to it, which was, he said he really enjoyed painting to the music and, try to capture the feeling of the music in the painting. So that was a lot of fun doing that one.
What was the song that you wrote for that? Sydney by Night?
That was called, From This Day.
Oh, From This Day.
I think the painting is a picture of an aeroplane flying through a night sky over the ocean with music coming out the back of all the engines. And that's because I told him I wrote it on a flight from America back to Australia. And so somewhere over the Pacific in the middle of the night, I'm sitting there, the only person in the cabin with a light on, while everyone's asleep, writing this music. So he captured that in the painting.
Well, there we go. I don't know if I can get that up there, but that's
it,
what he is referring to there. Yeah,
that's the one.
Now that and the other track that I just mentioned, the one about Sydney, was co-written with your brother, and you and John had a band together at one point, didn't you?
Yes, we had the Morrison Brothers Big Bad Band, and we went on the road with that for a few years, and that was it was a great. We always loved big bands, and that was a thing we wanted to do. We said back when we left school, we said let's start a a big band and tour it. And took us a couple of years to get it all together, but we did. I think in the when would that have been? In the early '80s, about '83.
Yeah,
we had the big bad band and got it on the road. So that was tremendous fun. A lot of good memories there.
I can understand what makes a big bad band big. Just numbers. What made you bad?
Oh well, it was that use of the word bad in that way that says that's bad, meaning that's good. And it was I guess partly to the style of big band we liked. Particularly was that really full on using all the brass and the drums were quite prominent, and it was a heavy band, and we used to do mainly concerts with that band. And when I say that, I mean you sort of have all sorts of different gigs, and you can do clubs, and you can do sort of 3 sets and things like that. That band was basically a concert performance band. We sort of took people on a journey, and it was it was fun to write for, and fantastic for us to sort of live out that dream of being on the road with the big band. We toured a lot of places with that band.
Yeah. Now you, I guess you're very known for very serious contemporary jazz music over the years. But if I date back to this one and go to the final track on here, we're doing the Flintstones theme. What was that all about?
Well, it is a cartoon. It is the Flintstones, but in actual fact, it comes from a period in TV history when most of the TV themes were jazz, were big bands, and were quite serious jazz tracks. And the Flintstones particularly is based on the chords of George Gershwin's I Got Rhythm, which is one of the most popular sets of chords for bebop to be written over. Charlie Parker's Anthropology, things like that, are all written over I Got Rhythm. So when they wrote the theme to the Flintstones, whoever was sort of, came up with the idea for that certainly loved bebop and quite serious jazz, because it's that kind of track. I mean, once you put the words to it, and it's, about a family with, living in bedrock and all that, it takes on a more cartoon aspect. But musically and harmonically, it's very much based in serious jazz and in bebop.
Yeah. Well, I guess it took you quite a while to get to, curating the Great American Songbook, which you did only a few years ago with the Great American Songbook album. Now cutting, that many songs down to what you can fit on an album must have been very difficult.
Yes, that's another one of those ones where it's what do I leave out? You start with that's the way I do it. Start with a list of what you'd like to do, which would be far too big, and then see what you can lose. The Great American Songbook, you could do volumes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and still be going. So many songs fit that description and come, from what they refer to, the Great American Songbook, but all fantastic tunes, great melodies, great harmonies, and almost universally lend themselves to being, treated in a jazz way. So lots of wonderful material there.
You've worked with so many greats over the years, Sinatra, Quincy Jones. That must have been an incredible experience.
Oh yeah. I've been lucky. The way I put it is I've had the great good fortune to meet most of my record collection, and so many of those luminaries of jazz over the years that I've had the chance to meet or even play with and do projects with, such as Quincy and Dizzy Gillespie and so many others. And meeting Sinatra was a big one. It was I was backstage and they said, Mr. Sinatra will be here soon. Stand by, you're about to meet him. I thought, oh, great. I'm standing backstage. It's outdoors, this big sound shell. And these 3 large stretched Cadillac limos pulled up, and I thought, oh, this is him. And all these people got out, and they were all very large and all wearing dark suits. And I realized that was just the limos for his bodyguards. And they formed a perimeter, and then the chopper came in and landed in the middle of the perimeter, and he stepped out, and I thought, yeah, that's okay. That's the way to do it. That was very exciting, and he's such a legend and such a part of the history of the music.
Well, you would have been very young then too.
Yes, trying to think what age I would have been back then. I was in my in my 20s.
Mm.
So it's it's a while ago. So many things have happened over so many periods of my career that sometimes it's hard. I even forget, things that have happened, and sort of go, that's right. We did that in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s. It's time marches on, but when you've got so many tours, so many gigs, so many people you've played with over so many years. I do find myself sometimes sort of remembering something when someone mentions it, going, oh, gee, I'd completely forgotten that I did that. So, my 20s, I just turned 60 recently, so I'm not old, mate. I'm still young, but certainly, the 20s are nearly 40 years ago now. So, yeah, a lot of water under the bridge, a lot of gigs since then.
It's okay. You're a lot younger than me, so don't you worry. You're the kid in the room at the moment. Well, it's good to see you've given back too, because there was the Academy Jazz Orchestra album that you did, and they were all students, weren't they?
Yes, absolutely. And a great band, wonderful young musicians. And I've always had a passion for passing on what we can to the next generation and to get together and play with young musicians. And I remember being that person myself, when Don Burrows took me under his wing when I was only 16. And I remember what that felt like. And I think that's one of the things that drives me forward to want to keep doing that, because I want to pass on that feeling, to another generation of young players.
Mm. Well, it's going to be great to see you in such a wonderful spot as Twilight at Taronga. What a backdrop you get to perform to.
I've got to say something about Twilight at Taronga. Yes, there's the backdrop, and it's the first thing we've got to talk about, because you're sitting there on the grass looking at a gig in this, great sound shell and with good lighting and sound and everything else, but right behind it there's Sydney Harbour. I mean, to me, I'm a little biased. I grew up in Sydney since I was 7, and it's my favourite place in the world. And so I think there's no better place to sit. But the other thing I wanted to say, which perhaps audiences don't think about because they can't help but notice the view, is what it feels like for us to play. We're looking the other way at people on a grassy hill. And so you might think, well, we don't get to see the view. We could be anywhere. I mean, it's still a nice grassy hill, but we can't see the harbour. But it actually makes an enormous difference. And I'll tell you why. One of the things that colours a performance, of course, is who you're playing with, the music you're playing. But right up there at the top of it is what the audience feels like you're playing to, what mood they're in, what kind of feeling they have. And if you go into a very nice concert hall somewhere, particularly some of the halls I play in Europe that are very historic, before you play a note, that creates an atmosphere. It's quite a formal atmosphere, you can imagine it like that. So when I play at the Zoo each year, which I've been doing for, no one seems to know exactly, but it's got to be around 25 years or something like that. When I play at the Zoo, we're very aware right away of how the audience feels because of the view they've got and how they're sitting on a grassy hill with a picnic, perhaps lying on a blanket with a beautiful view and listening to music. Can imagine how they feel. We feel that on stage, and that creates a different atmosphere that we can play in. And so I always love that gig because I know I'm going to arrive in a place where the audience is kind of literally lying back, not just figuratively, and relaxed and just ready to have a good time and enjoy the music. They're not sitting in a concert hall. They're not in a jazz club, which has another mood, all of which I love. But I really look forward to the Zoo each year because it's quite unique in the atmosphere in which we get to play. And that makes us feel a certain way when we play too. And I think it works really well. And I always know we're going to have a great gig at the Zoo.
Yeah. Well, that date is coming up on February 26th. And, you've got a bit of a view at the moment too, because I should mention you are on your houseboat right now.
I am. I'm out on the water at the moment. Love being out on the water. And this is a good place to come and sit away from it all while I try and sort out the set list for the A to Z of Jazz.
Have you composed on the houseboat?
Yes. Oh, yeah, it's a great place. Out on the water, I always find quite inspiring. You feel like, literally I'm a few hundred metres from the shore, but figuratively, you're away from everything. You feel disconnected from the rest of the world. I do anyway, very quickly once I get on a boat. And it's a great place to sit and create.
Wow, fantastic stuff. Well, James, great to catch up with you again at Noise 11.
Great to talk to you too, mate.